Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. The title is The Secret of the Universe. The secrets of the universe are in your attention. And so the sentence can be considered in two ways. The secrets of the universe are in your attention. That means they are in your scope. You're aware of them. Or the secrets of the universe are actually in what we call attention. And that's what I want to speak about more. I want to first say that okay, there we go. I feel that when the child is born, the child does not have an identity, and so the nature of the attention is being the whole moment. I feel that before we are conditioned into individuals, we're actually moments of being. Very simply stated, we are the whole moment. That child, for example, uh, why couldn't many dictators and tyrants, why couldn't they recruit infants? Because there was no individualism. There was no identity. There was nothing to identify with. The child was just being a child. So, first, our attention is our whole moment. And this, in a mystical sense, you get acquainted as your awareness. Right now, you're aware of my voice. That's a content in your awareness. Your own body is another content of your awareness. Whatever room or environment or whatever you see is also a content of your awareness. Now, the interesting thing is that when we use language, we awaken into our individualism. That means we suddenly notice it. We notice we're an individual. Jacques Lacan suggested this was the mirror effect. When the child, you can think of a human being as an emergent creature, and this creature looks at itself in the mirror and can identify itself. That plays a crucial part too in all of this. The secrets of the universe are in your attention, and your attention is the God of your thought. Now, this attention, I feel that when we awaken into individual consciousness, we forget that we're actually being the whole moment. That means it's as if this is the most basic way one can say it, that if you were to divide life into two dimensions, let us say a dimension where phenomenology is just being, and a dimension where phenomenology has to do to be. For example, your objective survival, your biology, your how you're surviving as a creature so far. This requires you to do. You have to be active. You have to live to live. That means, believe it or not, in life, there's this rule. If you don't care for something, you lose it. I'm not joking. If you sincerely don't care for something, it leaves you. Whether this is stretching from people or to whatnot. And when I say leaves you, I mean like this is what I mean by your attention is the god of your thought. Because what is thought is it is an image as a response to image we've seen, or if it's a dream, it's an image in an abstract response. I don't know how to say it. They say the child by age 11 to 14 attains a sort of individualism. Children are different, of course. Human beings are different from each other. We have this similar human form. But we're all different. It's as if humanity is this gym and we're all members of it, but we're different members and with different time plans and whatnot. Your attention is where the world has begun, and your attention is where the world will close its eyes through you. Reality moves in so many ways that to try to rationalize an endlessly changing world, that means it wasn't just enough that we can't see the edge of the universe. It's an entropic universe. Also, everything is changing. It's not. It's like it wasn't enough just that it's endless. It's like here the second shocker. Even if we see the edge, the edge is changing. We don't know if the universe has an edge or is an endless expansion into the void, or maybe even expansion from our dimension is something else from another. So you notice in life, there's moments where you're just being. Before I gave this talk, I just had a silent moment where I noticed how I was being. But when you do things, you appear as an individual. When you are still in silence, and when you're still in silence for a while, you'll notice you're not an individual. Individualism has to do with the animateness of an object. That means I see an object here. Imagine I made a statue of myself. Would that statue be me on some level? Like it is of me, but it is not me. The object doesn't have an aware to be it's an object. So if we wanted to take a purely materialistic approach, it would be matter is doing something weird. Evolution is doing something even weirder. That an object became a subject to itself. And all of this is pointing to how we are realizing we're a phenomenology of attention, of the presence of attention, prior to we are the phenomenology of personality of whatever image is in the moment. There was this very fascinating idea that there was this woman who was asked, I forget her name, but she was asked about consciousness and its nature, and she proposed a very incredible question. She said, let's say we had every technology we needed to see consciousness. What do you expect the result to be? That means when we've discovered consciousness, does that mean I can consciously perceive from your eyes? Does that mean consciousness is in some sense, can you show something for it? So the question is an abstract way. It's as if how human intelligence is held in an unknown way, which relates to, I find, consciousness and direct experience, and how the moment in existence is kept in a known way, in regards to, what do you call it? I can't find the word for it, but I'm saying like I'm saying that just like there is darkness in this world, as much as there is light, there is both. And we start off as an individual conscious object. Okay, that means the moment that you're an individual, that's when the soul searching begins. Because before you were an individual, who was searching? You know, before I was a person to myself, there were no ambitions, there were no dreams. It's like you ask a newborn infant, imagine, a newborn child, and you're like, child, tell me the secret of the universe, and the child just cries. And what if later on we realize that this world is the tears of the gods, or poetically, where the tears of the gods come. So this individual conscious object, where does it have to go? Like this is kind of like what comes with this life plan, with this human life plan. You are this individual, objective creature, this conscious object, this object that is conscious of itself. And so you either, or how would I say it? It's like you are an individual for a certain amount of time. And where your attention goes will suggest where the work of eons goes. An individual object will evolve into a collective subject, and the collective subject and the individual object will become wings for a bird, wings for the witness. There's this incredible story in Vedanta where it's this analogy of these two birds, the story of the two birds. And what is this story? This story is that there is a bird on a higher branch, and this bird, from the beginning, oh, sorry, there's two branches, the higher and lower one. I'll tell you what's on the lower one first. On the lower branch, there is a bird that has, from the beginning of its life, been endlessly working. It has never stopped. This bird has been, doing everything, building a nest, feeding its young, doing whatever. Now, there is a second bird. This second bird excuse me. Sorry guys, I just got distracted for a second. Lower branch, this bird has been working from the beginning of its life. On the higher branch, you find a bird that has never been moving, and that's the point. That's the point, that there's a component to your intelligence that doesn't identify with change. It changelessly watches change as if it could never be defined by a shape, as if there is an attributeless unknown factor to how we're intelligent, and none of us know. And we don't know if in the future they're going to figure out what it is. I've kind of envisioned that we need a new language. We need a geometrical language to tap into it. But it is also not a concept. The nature of the mind is not a concept, and it's not an object. We call it a mind, but you think those four letters are the presence of the whole moment? Language is a child of your moment. It is not the moment. It is an extension. It is like the sun, you know? in which the light beam, the father of the light beam, was the sun. You know, there's this poet named Hafez, from, I don't know, 700, 900 years ago or something, the Sufi poet. And you know what Hafez says? Hafez says this truth of nature, and you can even, you know, suppose it to be consciousness, the truth of consciousness. He says it's as if truth is the sun and all its light beams. All the sun's light beams are hitting all the objects on earth and casting shadows. And in Hafez's poetry, he was saying us believing in life is the shadow. It's the shadow of our life. You know, that means I've had so many moments where it was. This is why, to some degree, I find cause and if the person looks at reality as just something that was caused and has an effect, it can lead to, if you are a kind of like neat freak for conception, it can drive you mad in a strange way, because it will open up this geometrical extension of reality. That means some abilities will not arrive unless the person has demonstrated they can let go first. The attention is where it's all happening. Your attention is the fascination of a lifetime, to study its nature, to see what it is. And do you know how beyond thought it goes? Do you know there will be a moment in this life where you will laugh, realizing you were never what you thought to be? When every day the being is waking up and having endless thoughts, having different thoughts. What is this? What is this? How am I the same me when I am celebrating a new day? You know, so it's this paradox of who we are behind our eyes to what we are actually in front of our eyes. And for me, it feels like, of course, there's various explanations. It gets more complex. The more you look at matter, the more you see interconnectivity. The more you see interconnectivity, that means the moment you answer the question, it's like this. It's this endless game where the question requires the answer to be in a more aware state than the question, and then the question goes up. It's literally like questions and answers are playing a chess game in the mind of humanity. And so the variables change and the variables increase to some point. This is what Socrates meant: the only true knowledge is to know that you know nothing. Why was he saying that? Because on some level, when you imagine you had a flashlight and you were in a forest, and you found out more about the forest, but then you realize how bigger the forest is. Imagine you were in a forest and you went to the highest hill to get a look at where things are, right? So the moment you get access to the top of the hill, you get more knowledge. You see where everything is, but you also, the question becomes vaster, becomes intense. Welcome to the chat section. Anybody who has a question, feel free to ask and I will attempt an answer. I feel that it is very hard, or it should be hard, for a species when they become conscious to kill each other because they're made in an image that means we're all human beings. So, for example, how do you feel when, like, a wild dog is chasing a human being, and then people go and defend that person? You know, they're like, "Holy shit, wild dog is attacking a person. Let's do something." In a third world country, I've seen a couple instances of this. But if it was a human being, that human being would look at the other human being and consider similarity in human dimension. I feel that the mystery of consciousness, it is as if we're seeing that an ability to discriminate. It's the discriminatory ability of the human being. That is ultimately what I feel is happening. The attention is moving. That means imagine every word, every concept, every term you had heard was hollow. What would be left? That is the mystic. When language no longer shackles the soul. You know, there was this God, I'm forgetting the names, but there was this social scientist. This social scientist said, brought forth a question, and he was kind of like, maybe we should ask why we are conscious of processes. Like, why are we not conscious? Like, right now, your heart and your biological body is occurring without you thinking about it. So there's obviously evidence of intelligence beyond thought, you know. But the thing is, why, for example, like a decision for how a person drives or how a person paints or how someone designs something, why is it that those are conscious decisions? Why aren't, like, right now I would choose to give this talk, and I'm saying, why are we not conscious of our heart, for example? Why don't we have to think it just beats? But why is it in life we have to think and decide? You know, that's an incredibly mysterious question. It's an incredibly deep question. Why are we conscious of what we are, and how do we know this consciousness is not lost in a solipsist simulation? You know what it feels like being a human being? It feels like you're part of a you're an actor in a film that you didn't write and you don't understand. You know, it's as if there's a greater story at work, a story that perhaps human mind can't fathom. You know, let's call it the ultra story, you know, a narrative that cannot be fathomed by a creature. The mystery of attention is that if it's not an object and if it's not a subject, pretty much that's where the doer lives. That's where the ego lives. So it is not whether. So if it's not an object and it's not a subject and it's the container of sensory experience, the conscious container of sensory experience, I think an incredible question to ask is our attention from our body? Or is our attention how the body has a sort of unique capacity, like an antenna, to receive other phenomenology? Because when I thought about this wheel of karma that the Buddha spoke about, just karma in general, and guys, sorry, I just feel I didn't finish the bird story, but in that bird story, the bird not, oh no, I think I finished it. Just pretty much there's a silent dimension witnessing the movement. For me, meditation had an artificialness to it, the way the modern world seemed to be engaging it. You know what it feels like? There, um, modernity feels like a war. And so this war has casualties, and these casualties run outside of an inefficient system, wondering what else is there and who else they can be. And it's as if looking at this wheel of karma and being, universe, you telling me you're endlessly breaking and creating yourself all the time? It's as if, is existence insane? You see? That's the cool thing. You can't put the whole cosmos, you know, in shackles of language. So that's the thing. Your attention is not behavior. It's where behavior happens. This is the true nature. At least I've experienced it to this degree. That what tends to happen is that you will find a moment you trust, then your intuition is not like a river going against you. Then, as you trust your intuition, your mind projects events. And as you trust your intuition, trust the inner events, your outer events follow. Your outer events feel like one step behind the inner event. And so when you sit down and close your eyes, because the inner event is moving earlier, what happens is you come to this ultimate stillness where there is literally no thought, no need for a thought. Why was there ever a need for meditation to be a sort of exercise? Meditation is an attention. You're a creature of attention. That means the whole idea, you know, it's like, I do understand the importance of physical posture, but I'm telling you, there is something else going on in this life that is so much more mysterious than how we are defining the objective realm from behind our eyes. Isn't it fascinating? Right now, if somebody told you this, whoever you think you are as a person, that thought that you think is you, is that thought physical? Is that thought existential? Or is it unknown, vague, experiential? Our inner realms are unknown and vague and experiential. So it is the attention that becomes the pilot. When your presence pilots you, nature, uh, the royalty of nature honors you. That means the living world realizes how you're looking at it, but this living world is not a character, it is your whole moment. And I don't know how else you can word it because it goes beyond the language threshold. It's literally you trust yourself into, you know, you trust yourself into a liberating non existence by the presence of the experience. Mysticism gets even so deep, especially in Vedanta, where even to certain yogis, their body was a house. So imagine yourself living in your house. It was a house for what? The attention, the awareness. So it's kind of like, how do we discriminate between, is it the world that's here, or is it me that is here that can have a world to even consider a world to be here for me to exist? I feel we have gone towards the era of advanced communication. I feel this means that we have to study communication in more advanced ways, and the only way we can study it is not by setting rules before we've explored. That makes the exploration limited. That's like telling someone explore but never go left. So whatever crossroad you come, never go left. It's like a limited filter. And anger and resistance and all of these are because of the personal filters. That means there's moments where I playfully roam my inner realms, and usually, in family gatherings where not, it's like in at when you're okay, let's say at work, when you're doing work, that is direct, serious attention. But when you are, let's say, at a party or something, the attention is uh, hovering, not hovering, just fluid. It's as if when you work, you're concentrated. Your attention is like ice. You know, when you're at a house party, your attention is fluid. When you're at a mountain meditating, reaching the ultimate state of non-duality, there your attention has become gas, and when it has become like gas, when you have not feared the absence that gives the fullness of this life meaning, when you don't fear the life that you are here to live, and it's honestly a roller coaster feeling. What does that mean? Imagine it's a roller coaster you're on once. That means you don't fear. It's like, imagine you pay and you go on a roller coaster and you close your eyes the whole time. It's like, what a silly investment, you know? What a silly investment. And even though that's the case, usually in my first time I went on this roller coaster in Canada's Wonderland, I literally felt like, literally, it was the most out of body I had felt. After some point, I was just like, all right, whatever happens, happens. And I was just like, just going through. So if this life is a roller coaster, what holds us back? And I feel there is no one to blame if you want to pilot your life. If you feel your life belongs to someone else, or to something else, or to some other idea, other than where your attention is, then it's like you're letting someone else tell you what to do. But I'm saying, here's how you get rid of this issue. This is what I feel many of these poor souls who came to talk about non duality couldn't bypass. You know, that the idea doesn't need to exist in the first place. That means, check this out, what happens when You do something wrong, and let's say you get the worst sort of consequence and punishment. Now, what after the punishment, though? It's a return to a neutrality. And that neutrality of the attention is the greatest clue that there is more in this world than our language. We have to become pilots of our consciousness. Regardless of our choices in this world, regardless of the archetypes that find us in the moment to be us, the presence of the witness of the inner film is not an image. A return to a confrontation of where simplicity was born, the mind that fears the non dual, the mind that moves beyond duality. Either you become a pilot of your consciousness to infinity and beyond, or you become an advanced communicator going towards the singular void. Your mind right now has either comprehended itself through complete empty space, it has discovered its true nature that way, or it has discovered its true nature through advanced movement. What does that mean? That means I wouldn't be surprised that it's very obvious that if you move your physical body in extreme ways, during how they are such new experiences, you will notice the essence of the moment. My attention has playfully appeared and moved to the world as the elements. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Back in the day, the periodic chemistry class was very short. The dude would just come and it's like, hey guys, it's just earth, air, fire, water, and ether. Class over, you know. You all graduate. For me, intuition, thought, the inner realms, they have appeared as a river. They have appeared as wind. I feel like even when I pass away from this life, I'm gonna feel like wind. There's something about that. Moments of anger, the inner realms has burned because anytime you take something, that's what fire does. Wherever fire goes, it transforms, it takes, it changes, and it destroys. You know, I dedicated an idea to the wind, and I called it the winds of evolution. And I saw that's how the logos moves. It's like the wind that moves the leaves on the tree. The leaves can't see it, but they are moved. You know, it is the prime mover of perception. The one who, it's like where your attention is where the steering wheel or the navigation for meaning is. You know, it's like my ability to give this talk is dependent on my attention. You know, if my attention suddenly roams too much in my inner realms, I can't pilot through the talk. Or even if I get this interrupted by the outer realms. In life, we are oftentimes so obsessed with results that we deny other options. You know, it's kind of like every person knows where in front of their eyes is, but how many people know where behind their eyes is and how that translates into being something? That means there's literally a translation between an energy just being in the moment and then energy being manifest in a certain way. You know, it's as if is energy is sight. I would call this Mr. Within's, I don't know why this name is coming for it, but I'll say the mortal claim. So let's remember this idea as the mortal claim. And the idea is that if energy, you go define, if I read for you the definition of energy, let me just read the definition for energy for you. Alright, guys, so the first law of thermodynamics, also known as law of conservation of energy, states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Energy can only be transferred or changed from one form to another. That is the first law of thermodynamics. Now, this is the Mr. Within's the mortal claim. If we say that energy, if we consider the first law of thermodynamics, energy cannot be created or destroyed, it just transforms, transfers, or changes from one form to another. For example, we have potential energy, and this potential energy becomes kinetic energy. Okay, so this is the first law of first law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. So take that in. Energy can't die, and energy was never born. Now, so the idea is that if energy cannot be created or destroyed, when the human being comes to see what consciousness and sight and all of this is, regardless of the objectiveness of subjectiveness, it's energy being present in the moment. So if we say sight equals energy, and if we say energy equals can't be created or destroyed, then we are saying we are conscious sight. All sight reverse engineers back to whatever's present in the moment. And it's energy. And so scientifically, energy, at least as far as this banner holds, energy can be created or destroyed, but our sight is being energy and we think we're temporary. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird that the body can be destroyed, but if consciousness is an energy in a subtler, beyond the human range of frequency, then we, by our definition, by our scientific definitions, are conscious energy eternal. Because you need energy to be conscious. So consciousness and energy, there's an inseparability there. Do you see? So we are energy conscious. Energy plus consciousness equals human being. Somebody make that into an equation. So that's what I'm saying. That's the mortal claim. Because it's being claimed by a mortal. Energy changes. Buddhists say you're a transmigrating soul. We see energy as consciousness. I mean, it's all there, is it not? I'm kind of happy I shared that. I don't know how many people, like, I wonder what the audience thinks of that, you know. But I think that's it. Science has proven that consciousness is eternal. If consciousness is in any way being related to energy, it is eternal in the sense that, let me say, awareness is that energy that can't be created or destroyed, but potential energy to kinetic energy is this endless dance of, for example, the Buddhists would say incarnations. of experiencing life and then experiencing between the life, and then experiencing another life and experiencing between the life. It's like the person experiences the thought, then goes somewhere else, experiences another thought. Sleeps, wakes up, and whatnot. So that's the thing. When you realize you're more eternal, like I don't know, I feel like technically science has, I mean, guys, it's not the fault of any system of idea. After some point, you see ideology can go only so far, and it's like there are certain archetypes in nature, certain ways that all human beings. It's as if archetypes are the halls that human beings walk through. What does that mean? That means, let's say, two people having the same, or all the mothers in the world who are embodying the mother archetype, they're all in like the same room. That means if we conducted a study of the various archetypes in society, we would also notice these archetypes are there for situations and they change. Because what you desire is based on how much you know. If you knew something more, you would desire something different. So the desire can change based on how much the attention is on. So I'm gonna read some Upanishad quotes for the viewers. Upanishads is like the epitome of non-duality, you can say. It's taken us there. The wise one who has realized that his own higher self has become all and sees the oneness of entire existence, non-dual, what sorrow and what delusion can overwhelm him? That means when you see that suffering is only for creatures that have separated from a singular presence, it's because it's like saying it's understandable how your physical body suffers, but it's not obvious how the mind, which is being the whole moment, suffer. Can the moment suffer? Can awareness suffer? Can attention suffer? Attention can go to suffering, but I don't think attention suffers. So here it's saying that when you realize that kind of higher self, you're realizing a self that is beyond how the previous eyes perceive. Trisanku proclaimed, after the attainment of the knowledge of the self, I am the mover of the tree of the universe. My fame rises high, like a mountain peak. My root is the supremely pure Brahman. I am the unstained essence of the self, like the nectar of immortality that resides in the sun. I am the brightest treasure, I am the shining wisdom, I am immortal and imperishable. I mean, I think he's being a bit dramatic about it, but you know, it's around along those lines. Um, Here from Shavatra Upanishad, Shiv, I can't pronounce this. The Shivtashvatra Upanishad. The Supreme Lord is higher than Brahma, and even beyond Brahman. He is vast and hidden in the bodies of all living beings. By knowing Him, who alone pervades the entire universe, one becomes immortal. One become immortal. Um, the same Upanishad says it is the non-dual self that exists at all times, before and during the creation and after dissolution of the universe. It assumes manifold powers and appears as the Divine Lord. He is the protector of all the worlds. Those who realize this being become immortal. All faces are His faces, all head His heads, all necks His necks. He dwells in the casual hearts of all beings. He is the all-pervading Bhagavan. Therefore He is the omnipresent and merciful Lord. Again, guys, another clue towards how everything is being a field of being. A field of activity, you know. Knowledge of the divine dissolves all bonds and gives freedom from every kind of misery, including birth and death. From the Ishavasya Upanishad. Know that all this, whatever moves in this moving world, is enveloped by God. Oh my God. It says, know that all this, whatever moves in this moving world, is enveloped by God. Therefore, find your enjoyment in renunciation. Do not covet what belongs to others. You know, it's very complex because on some level, the inner realms, it's kind of like mystically they advance through inaction. The outer realms advance through action. From the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. When the speech of this dead person enters into the fire, breath into the air, the eye into the sun, the mind into the moon, the hearing into the space, into the earth the body, into the ether the self, into the shrubs the hairs of the body, into the trees the hairs of the head. When the blood and the seed are deposited in the water, where is then that person? Wow. Wow, wow, wow. He says, into the ether the self. What this man is. I mean, it's the Upanishad, so I should have expected this. This quote is post-worthy. Just a second, guys. Okay. Let's continue with this quote tunnel. The earth is the honey of all beings, Madhu the effect, and all beings are the honey, Madhu the effect of this earth. Guys, it seems the Upanishads are suggesting our destiny is sweet as a species. From the Chandogya Upanishad. As large as this ether, in brackets all space, is, as large as this ether is, so large is that ether within the heart. Both heaven and earth are contained within it. Both fire and air, both sun and moon, both lightning and stars, and whatever there is of him, the self, here in the world, and whatever is not, whatever has been or will be, all that is contained within it. I would like to now tunnel into a couple Ramana Maharshi quotes, see where this goes. Okay, let's get into some Ramana Maharshi quotes, guys. Ramana Maharshi says, when the embodied beings, treat each other with equal respect and have good brotherly feelings amongst themselves, great peace and harmony abound. Then all this earth shines like one house. The whole world shines like the one dwelling house of the entire human family. Ramana Maharshi says, if other thoughts rise, one should scratch their head. No, I'm joking. He doesn't say that. Ramana Maharshi says, if other thoughts rise, one should, without attempting to complete them, inquire, to whom did they arise? It will be known to me. If one then inquires, who am I? The mind, power of attention, will turn back to its source. By repeatedly practicing, thus the power of the mind the power of the mind to abide in its source increases. Ramana Maharshi says, the mind will subside only by means of the inquiry, who am I? The thought, who am I, in quotations, destroying all other thoughts, will itself finally be destroyed like the stick used for steering the funeral pyre. Ramana Maharshi says, what is called mind is a wondrous power existing in self, capital S. It projects all thoughts. If we set aside all thoughts and see, there will be no such thing as mind remaining separate. Therefore, thought itself is the form of the mind. Other than thoughts, there's no such thing as the mind. Ramana Maharshi says, if you hold this feeling of I, like in quotations, long enough and strongly enough, the false I, in quotations, will vanish, leaving only the unbroken awareness of the real, immanent I, in quotations, consciousness itself. So Ramana Maharshi's method, guys, is he's saying you right now are thinking you're a person, right? A personality. So look at that I. Look at how you're being an I thought, a thought of a self. Look at that and look at that long enough and strongly enough. And then he says the false I will vanish. That I that you look at will vanish. You'll notice you're not that I. And then he says, only the unbroken awareness of the real immanent I. That means you will realize consciousness itself before it had a personality, which to human beings it has to be communicated as their presence. And it shouldn't be storified too much, that means. We must honor the unknown, like as far as our knowledge can go. Like how we honor as far as our knowledge can Ramana says the explorers seek happiness in finding curiosities, discovering new lands, and undergoing risks and adventures. They are thrilling, but where is pleasure found? Only within. Pleasure is not to be sought in the external world. The eyes are open. The choice is yours. Ramana Maharshi says eventually all that one has learned will have to be forgotten. Ramana Maharshi says there's nothing like in quotations within or in quotations without. Both mean either the same thing or nothing. Yeah, because the moment you go within, for the within there is no without. There is no inner and outer realm for your as a presence, as a non-dual presence. There is an within or without when you are personality. When you're an individual and active in individual consciousness. One last quote, or let me read this. Ramana Maharshi says you can only stop the flow of thoughts by refusing to have any interest in it. Ramana Maharshi, then I will read. Okay, I'll read two more. I'll read this one first. He says, no one succeeds without effort. Those who succeed owe their success to perseverance. Then Ramana Maharshi says what I feel is one of his greatest statements. He says, it will come all right in the end. It will all come all right in the end. But it's not all right. It's not. It's two words. It's like ALL space right. You know. I mean, it will come all right in the end. That's the thing. How could it be wrong? How could the new be wrong? How could it be wrong? I mean, it's just another image. It's another symbol upon the mystery. So guys, that's the end of the talk. I'm going to open it up to Q&A for a couple minutes. If there's no questions and I see like a ball of hay past the chat section, then I'll kind of, the wind blow a ball of hay. That means like, like an empty street in movies, yeah. So if anybody has a question, please ask. If not, thanks for tuning in so far. I mean, so you think says liberating consciousness from consciousness, and then he says, and that has nothing to do with sex. I mean, of course, we're biological animals. Reproduction is a game. Like, that's a game you should play. It's an advantage. It's an opportunity of your existence, especially with the luxury we have now. Life is like a phone with multiple applications open. And if you don't trust your intelligence, you can't, just like an artist that doesn't trust the pen or the brush, they can't use it. That means the greatest skill to have in this life is concentration. It is the alertness from the eyes of your presence. I'll tell you what I mean by that. There was a moment where I was in a situation where it was very odd. There was nothing wrong in the situation, but I just felt something in the moment move. Like I felt like I was sitting with a crowd of people, and it was like what do you call it? Like literally, imagine as if there was a giant sphere around me, and I felt like that sphere just roll out of the room. Just roll out of the room and go somewhere else. I felt literally my presence went somewhere else. But I was still sitting there, and I just got out of the crowd and I left. It was like that kind of feeling. The thing is, you have a conscience when you need it. That means when you do the right thing, you don't have like an opposite conscience telling you to do the bad thing. I mean, they say there is desire, and of course, in the monotheistic tradition, um, there are fallen archetypes. But I'm telling you, reality. Guys, this is live. So I am you. Interesting username in the chat section. This is live. Yeah, man, I'm just tired. So my voice could be a, you know, bit mono, but it's just dimensions of life you navigate through. I mean, ever since I kind of feel like my mind every day has an opportunity to reanimate the world. Now, when it comes to reanimate the world, it has a certain level of stability. That means there is like, it's like as you go throughout the day, there is inner events going on behind your eyes. And when you realize those inner events, for example, the responsibility the person has to the world, to themselves, to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and whatnot. And guys, this is Q&A, so you can ask anything. It's to be honest, I'm not per se interested in too much questions. I just want to see how other people's inner realms are perceiving reality, really. You know, so you can also share that. It may not even be a question, but you can share your experience, for example. I would say that, okay, so conscience is being aware of a simpler way where things could have gone. It's a conscience arises because there's a change of speed. Conscience is the speed of how phenomena happened for you. If Because in this life, I mean, the people think. I mean, just think about it. When you drive a car, whoever you are, if you can drive a car, that's I mean, it may look simple, but it is a technology technically. And so, what does that mean? That means the attention you have driving on the highway, or be having an attention where it's like the whole car feels like your body, so you know exactly when something comes to your edge or whatever, you know? So, that same alertness, now imagine instead of you driving a car, your attention is driving your body and your reality. So I'm saying, imagine having the same level of attention you would have as like a NASCAR racer, but having that level of attention from the moment you wake up to all phenomena. It means it's like there's two ways of being playful. There's a playful that hasn't seen the serious first, and then there's the serious that has seen the playful. You know, and these are again like if our eyes, I feel, activate. Conscience is it happens I feel, at least the way I've been introduced to the idea is that it arises when you do the wrong thing or when you're about to, but it's so I think you don't mean, I think you mean a different word. I think you mean just consciousness. Consciousness, liberating consciousness from conscious. I would say it's the consciousness which is form based, realizing that before it's as if its origin was formless, and how that was a sort of projection of something being caused, its effect is in form. That's the thing. Don't look for a solution. Study the question. They say if you ask the wrong question, if your attention is in the wrong place, it's like then imagine you're in a marathon and you're running the wrong way. So it's like the people you're in that race with, they don't have to worry about you because you didn't look for yourself. So I would say instead of the person looking for some super technique to save their life, they have to look at what life is meaning to them. They have to notice before any metaphysics, before any sort of relationship with divinity, you got to study what language is to you and how you have held the curtains of the world open with it. I think it's a study of sight, really, and us realizing that we can't put words on it, so what do we do? And this is where, for the first time, we need to create a language of experience. And I feel we have nature as that language, so nature is a way of transcendence, a kind of pathway of transcendence. The other thing is how nature has deviated with itself. It's as if the moment there was the concept of a positive and negative, there was a positive enlightenment and there was a negative enlightenment, imagine, you know. But when the positive and negative enlightenment occurred at the same time, there was none. You see, certain ideas even are cancelled out. Do you know? The human being has to attempt to try to increase communication. Whoever you are, of course, help those in poverty first, but then help the communication of the neighborhood, help the minds of the human beings on this planet to begin wonder, uh, what is this master instrument they have that is their intelligence, a unique DNA, and after they have found a way to efficiently navigate the self, then you become open to the service for the world, and that's a really cool thing. I think a lot of human beings don't experience that, but I think now it's becoming way more and more, where it's not just a physical attainment, it's a feeling that is just right that we're looking for. And that just rightness is so non dual that literally it's as if there was no civilization, no problem. It's hilarious, you know? Some people say, oh my god, a nuclear bomb hits, you know, we can accidentally, somebody can press a button and we can go extinct, you know, and that's like, you know, a problem. And I'll be like, that's hilariously the solution. Because then who has the problem when we have gotten extinct? That means we have to recognize that humanity is such a fragile species that literally it is skin. Look at your body as a creature. We are fragile creatures. So we have to recognize, especially we go through a phase of childhood and then we march into the world wherever we're called for, you know? So I am you in the chat section says, shouldn't it be much more than a language? Yeah, it's an experience. So that's what I would say. So Mr. Curious says, I want to listen, please. Just say monkey. Hey, man, you know, it's like robots haven't taken over the earth yet, you know? Anyway, so I don't know, I am you. I don't know what to say to you. You say, shouldn't it be much more than a language? It's an experience. So it's very hard. I mean, I've wondered that then after, like, the normal language we speak, it's going to be a geometrical language. You know, Hegel, this philosopher, brought this point. that thoughts are internal objects. That's the way he spoke about them. Thoughts are internal objects. So if you think about a thought being an internal object, that means it's being object-like in a world. So that's why I say the inner realms. So attention is like a double-edged sword, where behind your eyes there's ways you can move. You can just close your eyes and still be a person, and you can open your eyes and move, you know. I am you. I'm saying there's no enlightenment there in the way you think. It's all language. The species is realizing it's not a subject, and it's probably gonna in a time span of, I think, I don't know, let's give it 100 years. It's gonna freak people out that they're gonna realize they were never just an object and a subject. They are a presence. You see, it's the language that storifies us into a character in a world. So, guys, I would encourage you to unleash your inner philosopher. That means, does anybody wonder about the mind? Does anybody wonder about the nature of their attention? You know, is life where your attention goes? Is the world limited to where your attention is? Is attention not an object or a subject, or what is it? And see, it's like that's the beauty of life. When it goes beyond language, you can only attempt to make a language, but the experiential domain goes so far beyond language that we can end up building endless language, and we're endless languages, and we're going to realize none of them is going to be able to cover the amount of experience that's occurring. So I'm not saying there's any sort of enlightenment like that. It's like you're a creature and there's light in your eyes that is projecting meaning. It's like wonder about this. You're if somebody asked you, I am you, who are you? You have nothing other than language. Language is like the clothing for the mind. Your identity is conceptual. Do you see? So tell me how can you be a person, without being a concept? You see, to deny the question with no input is inefficient. So, Mr. Curious, I will tell you that just look at what's being said. There was a shift that went in my life, that I started to think through imagery, and I stopped calling it thought even. It was just that there is a there's an internal cinematic experience of how concepts are being infusions of images. And when we don't study the mind, we forget how able the world was. That means it's like technologies can be lost. So you cannot be a concept of a person. You can be present, but you're not a person. Person is linguistic, it's dualistic. So I am you. How can you be a person without language? The word person is in language. How can you not? It's like it's a paradox. You're saying, how can you be language without language? It's subjective. I'm saying that you're not a subject. And so many people are the subjects of their subject. There is no past before the letter A. There is no recording of a past before the letter A, Mr. Curious, in the chat section. I am you says, can you define a person according to you? Listen, a person is, you have a biological body that after a long period of evolution has given you an ability to be conscious, and your personality is how you animate in the moment. And it's a mystery in regards to neurology of what is spontaneously evoking consciousness or the free will. So what it is I'm saying, guys, the world reality is surreality. It is too surreal. We're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. How true can language be when the universe is so vast? So on some level, the idea is trying to take people to a point where we're wondering about what is the ultimatum, what in this forest of endless archetypes of various ways the attention can move to identify with phenomenology. It's like, what is the nature of attention? In the Diamond Sutra, they would say, keep your mind alive and free without abiding in anywhere or anything. That means in today's society and world, everybody is identifying with every object or every subject they want. You know, it's as if like that's where the freedom of the modern world. But I'm telling you, what is the attention? Is the attention an object or a subject? And based on how that question is an experiential answer, how you have experienced life so far, I think then it suggests where your principal universal philosophy is oriented. Because you cannot be a person if you can't communicate. That means you are you. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Maybe the word person is multi. There's multiple angles. So I'm saying that can we all agree that there is language, and if somebody came and asked you who you are, literally what you would tell to them would be a story. So it's all in language, the stories of our life, as we say, all these human beings that have been opening their eyes in this world and living through this system and closing their eyes. What has it been? They have just opened their eyes, and their environment has said some stuff to them, and they have responded to the environment in a certain way in accordance to their DNA. And so consciousness has emerged as this phenomena where individualism has choice. But the individualism, there's so many factors of it that don't have choice. So when we really take a good look at life, all the dimensions of our past break in the presence of the new future. So that's what I was suggesting. Guys, it's not about agreement. Every person in the chat section right now, you don't have you have to realize you have your own inner realm. Your inner realm shouldn't be diminished by your outer realm. It should be technically strengthened by it. So what does that mean? That means Mr. Curious in the chat section and I am you in the chat section, you both have different eyes. You both have different eyes. And because you both have different eyes, your inner realms are constituted differently. But it doesn't mean if both of you were in a museum and you saw the Mona Lisa painting, you would see the same Mona Lisa painting. But from different ways your eyes have opened. And that's called ethnocentrism. That means we all have a sort of conditioning based on how far our eyes have looked at the world. You know. So Ali says, are you a very spiritual person? Um, I would say I I feel honestly not language can't contain experience. Language is a technology. I would say that I am a person that considers the world is alive. The whole moment has a sort of livelihood with the world. That means like I'm kinda I have a sort of ancient Greek inclination to see the planet as alive, you know? And so it's kind of like if civilization was built on a turtle's back, and if every day I would wake up and I could acknowledge that turtle, then I would say, in that sense, I am a spiritual person. Because for me, it's like, do you know how many human beings only see themselves in this life and they don't see anything else? That's the issue with desire. It's just narrow. Narrow, it's like brings down the quality. Because the issue is not the desire. The issue with desire is that you're wanting something too quick. That's the issue with desire. You want something that is not here yet right now. And when the person goes with that mindset, they might think, yo, law of attraction, I want it now. But they don't realize life, it's called life sensitivity. It's recognizing your universe has a mind and you're the eyes for that. I'm saying that I am you. In that example of the Mona Lisa, the point was that you and Mr. Curious are not clones. So you two have different eyes. You're two human beings with different DNA, right? So what does that mean? That means our inner realms, our eyes are open to the world in a way that nobody else can see. That means if you're a person and you have a problem in your life, nobody else sees that problem the same exact same way you are seeing that problem. That means nobody can solve a lot of problems in your life except you, because nobody can even see those problems. And we go on living day to day life with our inner realms kind of hidden, and conducting ourselves based on the nature of society, in the sense that how the Japanese said the man is the room he's in. That means when you're in the office, you're in that mindset. So what does that mean? That means human beings are temporary creatures, but they have built a society that rather than encouraging the raw curiosity, the rivers of vision that are behind the eyes of the children of this world, and it has made it a kind of system, like an unupdated system. It's a fax machine civilization, you know. That means I won't say it's good or bad, it's just irritating to see it function this way, you know? It's like asking the person before the person can do something that's good or bad, what is that moment before the action? What is that neutral moment before you make a good decision or a bad decision? What is that? That's a good question, I think. Guys, Ludwig Wittgenstein, this German philosopher, says the limits of my language are the limits of my world. That means his inner realms is limited to how much he can articulate them through language. You know, language is really, you gotta cross that ladder. You gotta climb that ladder before you get onto mysticism experientially. You have to look at the value of it. So the complex thing about defining an emotion, guys, I've kind of attempted it in this talk, but there's this strange feeling I get because an emotion is too complex. It's literally the amount of variables there are after a chess game. You play four moves. After you play four moves, it becomes like incredibly complex. You are in front of your eyes, you are a known creature in an unknown world. Okay, behind your eyes, you're an unknown creature behind an unknown world. Or let me say it like this. Sorry, let me say. Let me realign the symmetry of that. What I just said earlier. In front of your eyes, you're a conscious self, and you can be conscious of the world. Behind your eyes, you're an unconscious self in an unconscious world. And that's the thing. We have been so obsessed with being singular images of this of objects of desire that we have not realized, there's more here. And that's the most, I think, and that's the greatest enlightenment. So the guy's like, holy shit, there's more here. It's like, that's enlightenment for you guys. Mr. Curious, can in the chat section, can I ask you a question? Why did you name your username that? And guys, if there's more questions, keep them coming, or I shall practice teleportation from cyberspace. I think the weight of this life is based on what you carry, but the depth of this life is based on uh, how far you go forth. And really, that is it. Pretty much every day is like it's like there's an awakening to the whole day. There's a sort of uh, yeah, that's pretty much life. It's constantly like a reset. Literally, we're like phones that charge it. You know. Life doesn't need to just be a happy utopia. Too much happiness is unauthentic after some point. You're like, what is that? If it's happiness because of the inner realms, I get it. But if it's happiness because of the outer realms is a place, literally, I feel when you're the conscious waking state, it's just meant to work. It's just a dimension designed for, like, work is the path towards it. And it's very fascinating because the value of metaphysics is how it could suddenly switch the context where if you thought you like right now we're thinking we're a temporary being and we're like, what is eternity? You know? And Alan Watts had this quote where he's like, imagine what it would be like to wake up as if you never had gone to sleep or something. You know? So that's the thing. If we're an eternal being, this is just like this life is kind of like maybe 12% of what we are. That number is incredibly, spontaneously chosen, but I think that 12 is okay. That means the person's like, hey man, I realized my past lives. The person's like, buddy, you serious? Past lives? You're like 12% of this life. It's like, you're, so you only saw 12% of each past life. Oh man, I'm being playful, of course, but I don't know. Attention is, uh, I feel it's like an instrument you master. That's it. And they would say, the mind is a lousy master, but a great servant. That means your mind is a tool. And the mind is like the technology you use before you use any other technology. The mind is like the first thing the being holds in the day. You know. So, anyways, guys, is there any more questions, or shall silence enlighten us again? So, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. And just, I think the most ultimate wisdom is to realize there's so much unknown. And there was this guy, his name was Robert P. Persick. He's like, life is like an infinite beach, and we take a handful of sand, and we call that handful of sand our knowledge and our awareness and whatnot. So, what does that mean? That means look at what you're holding physically, like if you're holding something, and then look at what your attention is holding as your mind, or how your attention is being your mind. And I feel there's no greater, literally, there's nothing greater than a mirror. It's like a mirror is all you need to get out of the simulation. So, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and namaste. And remember, the secrets of the universe are in your attention. Like, literally in your attention. Much blessings and namaste.